Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here, got another Master Duel video for you. So I'm coming at you with my first take on Centurion White Forest. Yet another variant of the new White Forest deck, among quite a few that have been seeing a lot of experimentation. We of course already covered the toy variant, which is the probably most pure of the White Forest variants. Here we're going to be covering, like I said, the Centurion build. So these two archetypes, Centurion and White Forest, have a ton of synergy with each other. They like to do a lot of the same things, right? The most obvious example of this, I think, is the fact that a Stellar of the White Forest can special summon a Light Spellcaster Tuner from your deck. Similarly, LZ will add back to hand when a Light Spellcaster is special summoned to your opponent, to your field rather, during your opponent's turn, right? So these, of course, not only work with their own archetypes monsters, but also the Centurion Primera, who is a level 4 Light Spellcaster Tuner. Now that level 4 is also quite important for the sort of interactivity these two archetypes can share with each other, because both Centurion and White Forest Synchro monsters are generic. They actually don't have any requirements outside, of course, the regular Synchro requirement of a tuner plus one or more non-tuners, meaning that you can kind of interchangeably use Centurion cards to go into White Forest plays, and then also White Forest cards to go into Centurion plays. And you're going to see examples of that in the games that we have coming up here. Another way in which these two archetypes intersect a lot is the fact that White Forest is not bad at making level 12s, and what better level 12 to make than Auxilia, which will of course allow you to go into your Centurion line pretty much by itself, right? Now, sometimes there are other answers to that question. Sometimes we are just going to make the Crimson Dragon and try to go Dissipator or Crystal Wing, but a lot of that can be very situationally dependent, right? I will say Crystal Wing and Dissipator, not as required in this build as it was in the toy build. Same also with the Muddy Mud Dragon into Dragoon line. I think that is definitely much less required in Centurion White Forest than it was in the toy deck, right? I very much took the White Forest extra deck and added Centurion cards to it, but you could also take a Centurion extra deck and just add some of the White Forest cards to that. Working either direction really does pay off pretty much either way, right? Yet another point in which these archetypes intersect is, of course, the fact that a Stellar and LZ like you to have spell and trap cards to send, and Centurion does offer that. A lot of the time you do, of course, want to keep your field spell on the field, but let's say you open stand-up Centurion plus a Stellar, you could definitely go stand-up Centurion to place and summon Primera, or something like that, or you probably would want to do Trudea, right? To place from your deck and then summon Trudea. And if your opponent goes to, like, Valor that, then, I know I said a Stellar, but let's actually switch to LZ. And if they go to Valor that, oh no, it could be a Stellar, because you wouldn't have used your normal summon in that situation. Right, yeah, Field Spell plus a Stellar. You go to Field Spell, special the Trudea, and then activate the effect. They negate it. You could simply normal a Stellar, send off the stand-up Centurion, and then just go into a full White Forest line. You even have an extra level 4 non-tuner body to mess around and make plays with, which in that case will let you go into a 10, which is very nice. This is all really just a long way of saying, as I've mentioned a couple of times now, that, yeah, you can really bounce back and forth between these two archetypes at will. Is this the best way to play either of these decks? Is a question I get asked a lot when it comes to variants. Like, as in, you know, decks that have certain variants. Sprite, of course. A lot of people ask, what's the best Sprite variant? And a lot of the times, especially when a deck has, like, 3 or more different variants, there often isn't really an answer of this one is definitively the best. Each carries their own set of pros and cons, right? There are certain pros to playing this deck over like a pure Centurion deck, or a toy White Forest deck. There are also cons to each of those. Now, a lot of the time, you can look at the pros and cons and come to a relatively, emphasis on relatively objective conclusion as far as which is the strongest in a given meta, based on what each variant is good or bad at. But I think if you're asking yourself which is the best one, I don't know that that's the best way to approach it. I think you should be looking at the pros and cons of each different variant, right? And as I've discussed before, a lot of the big pros of this variant is the flexibility between lines and archetypes. Oh, especially with 3 Emblema Oath. Like, because that's another thing, too. You could actually way cut down on Centurion stuff and even still play a toy engine. I actually almost did that, and I might actually do that for an update video on this deck. We're playing 2 Primera and 3 stand-up, because I have the feeling some people might ask me why I'm not playing 3 Primera. You don't need 3, you don't even need 2. You could play 1 Primera, 1 Trudea, 1 stand-up, 1 Phalanx. I'd probably still play 1 Wake Up as well. But I would still play a full playset of Emblema Oath, because this is a 1-card line, into your full Centurion line that doesn't even use your normal summon. If you're gonna then max out on any other cards, the next one I would do is Stand Up, the field spell. Again, for its ability to let you go into plays without committing, Centurion plays in particular, without committing your normal summon. So yeah, I definitely see a world where you go down to 1 Primera here. Or again, if you really want to fit even more stuff, 1 stand-up as well. Of course, we have stuff like Nib and Triple Tack you could cut, Veilers, Imperm. As always, we're a little heavier on hand traps than most builds would be. In pretty much any deck that has the room for it, I really like to do that. I think in best of 1, having a good amount of hand traps, and by good I mean more than 10, is fairly important. It's not required for success, but I do think it is important. Again, in decks that can afford the space, and this deck definitely can. So, yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say about the list. Why don't we go ahead and break it down card by card, and then we'll look at some games. So, we're on 2 Effect Veiler, 3 Maxi, 3 Esteller of the White Forest, 3 Elzette of the White Forest, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Centurion Primera, we got 1 Centurion Trudea, 3 Sylvie of the White Forest, 1 Rukia of the White Forest, 1 Centurion Gargoyle 2, 1 Nibiru of the Primal Being, 1 Triple Tactics Talent, 1 Tails of the White Forest, 3 Stand-Up Centurion, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Cross-Out Designator, 3 Emblema Oath, 1 Wake Up Centurion, 3 Infinite Impermanence, 1 Centurion Phalanx, and then 1 Woes of the White Forest. And that'll do it for our main deck. Excuse me, for our extra deck, we are on 1 Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, 1 Albion the Braided Dragon, 1 Formula Synchron, 1 Muddy Mud Dragon, 1 Silvera, Wolf Tamer of the White Forest, 1 Rakila, Sinister Soul of the White Forest, 1 Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, 1 Diabelle, Queen of the White Forest, 1 Baron de Fleur, 1 Bestial Dissipator, 1 Chaos Angel, 1 Cosmic Blazar Dragon, 1 Crimson Dragon, 1 Centurion Legatia, and then finally 1 Centurion Auxilia. That is going to do it for the list. Let's go ahead and take a look at these duels. Alright, our first game is going to be up against a mirror match, actually. Another Centurion White Forest deck. Their build seems to have a heavier Centurion emphasis, and they're playing a lot of board breakers as well. But we're going to take the first turn here. It's actually a little bit to our disadvantage just because of the way our opponent's build is. But anyway, I'm actually going to start by normal summoning Sylvie here, which sure enough is going to get hit with the Ash Blossom. This is one of those decks where you're going to do stuff like this a lot. Although I will say, I kind of misplayed slightly. Well, actually, we didn't really, for reasons we kind of didn't, for reasons you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. So, a lot of the time when you're playing a deck like this, you will end up using one line to sort of bait out disruption, and then another to actually go into your plays. So here, my thought process was, okay, I'll normal summon Sylvie, try to go for a White Forest line, right? Adding like Tails, and then activating Tails, and just, I guess, making plays from there. And if they interrupt that, then we can just go to Centurion stuff. Normal summoning Trudea, though, was also pretty important here, because that's pretty important to doing a Centurion line, and also would have baited plays. So here, I think I should have done it that way, because basically the way that I did it means that when I go for the Auxilia search here, I'm going to have to get Wake Up instead of Phalanx. I kind of miss out on a point of disruption as a result of doing it this way. Definitely want the Wake Up, of course, because then that's going to let me go into the level 12. Again, because we didn't set up Trudea. Alright, opponent's going to activate their stand-up. I'm going to use this moment to activate both Wake Up and Primera. We do have to play Wake Up as Chain Link 1, because we have to have a monster in our spell trap zone to be able to play Wake Up, right? So, go to Chain Link 1 Primera, Chain Link 2 stand-up to go for the level 12 Synchro. I just want to go for Blazar here. I mean, it's the only one we play. You do have the room, of course, in this deck for the Supernova. Again, by taking out probably Crystal Wing and or Dissipator. I would take out Crystal Wing first, but... I don't know. Oh, yeah. I actually totally forgot about this. So, when I was building this list, I put in Quasar, because that was just a total brain fart on my part. I literally didn't even realize it until I summoned it and I saw the animation, and I was like... Wait, that's not what I'm usually summoned here. So, I mean, Quasar, when it comes to the Omni Negate, is, like, very similar to Blazar. But don't worry, after this game, I swap it out. I normally play Quasar in pure Centurion because I own this and not a second Blazar. But, yeah, you'll notice that I let my opponents stand up and Primera resolve here. I'm doing that to get draws off the Max C, because I can just use the Quasar effect on the Primera's search effect to negate and destroy it, and then I still get my draw, and they still lose their, you know, ability to combo here, right? And then they're just going to concede. So, yeah, I wanted to start with this game as I usually like to do. I like to start with a pretty typical, like, this is kind of how games go when you go first with this deck. And yeah, like I said before, a lot of it is going to be either going for your White Forest line, it gets baited, then you throw down, you know, Stand Up or Emblema Oath, or you could start with something like Stand Up or Emblema Oath, that gets negated, and then you throw out something like a Stellar or LZ. But, yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at some more games here. Our next game is against another Centurion variant, but they're not on White Forest. Our opponent is playing Horus Red Dragon Archfiend Centurion. By RDA, I mean they have a small package of the Crimson Gaia and the what Resonator is it? I don't remember. Vision Resonator. There it is. Alright, so here we have the Primera, but as you can see, unfortunately, we just don't have any other follow-up play. We do have a call by for this Ash Blossom, but our opponent is going to also hit us with Imperm. This hand actually kind of highlights why it can be very important to open, you know, your starter plus extender, which this deck can do a lot. This hand just happened to not be one of those times. But, at the very least, if we're not opening starters and extenders, we do have a lot of interaction, a lot of hand traps here. Between Valor, Imperm, and Maxi, we can try to squeeze something out. Opponent's going to normal summon Primera. I'm going to use the Effect Valor here. I like using Valor before Imperm, although to be fair, against Centurion, this does give them a light monster in the graveyard, but looks like that's not going to really be an issue here, of course, for Bestial monsters. Alright, so opponent's going to Imseti pitching Vision Resonator. And you'll notice that I activated Maxi here. That looks like a really weird time to activate Maxi. But the reason I'm doing it now specifically is that I want to get the Maxi in before my opponent draws off the Imseti, because this is the point where they're least likely to have Call by or Crossout. I don't need to worry about Ash Blossom because I called by that last turn, but that doesn't mean they won't still top deck a potential out to the Maxi. If your opponent is going to draw cards, it's not a bad idea to chain Maxi in response for that exact reason. It's why you might see people chaining it to like Desires or a triple tech that's drawing to you sometimes. Alright, Vision Resonator grabbing Crimson Gaia. Opponent's also going to throw down the King Sark, especially in just Imseti before moving to battle here. Only getting one Maxi draw, but that does find us LZ, which is not bad. Definitely not bad. Drawing for a turn, and it's triple tack. So what I'm going to do here is activate LZ and send the Imperm. This does actually end up baiting out an Ash Blossom, which I suspect my opponent had, but couldn't use in response to Max C because of the call by. But this will let me use the triple tack draw 2. I have to draw 2 here. And we do manage to find the Emblema Oath. I was really looking for either this or Stand Up. So we can Emblema for the Trudea effect, go for the Primera, use Primera to summon herself, activate Primera, going for the Stand Up Centurion. Now, of course, we're going to activate that. Activate to pitch the LZ and place the Gargoyle 2. Not only do I not need LZ, and of course would rather have Maxi, but I can actually add back the LZ during the opponent's turn when we special summon Primera from the spell trap. From here, I don't really have the ability to OTK out, so I'm just going to try to go for a pretty typical Centurion combo line. Going for the Auxilia, adding the Phalanx, setting up the ability to go into a Quasar next turn, battling over the Primera here to get that off the board, setting the Phalanx, and then of course during the end phase we get the Primera back. So my tentative plan is that I can Phalanx the Imseti if I have to, but if my opponent is trying to go for plays, I might actually have some different options. Sure enough, they're going to go for Crimson Gaia for the Resonator. I figured that was going to happen. Going to use this moment to go for the Trudea and the Primera. Want to summon that out now as a means of course, getting the Blazar out before too much happens. The other nice thing about LZ is that you get to actually chain block the stand-up, which doesn't matter a lot of the time, but can matter a decent amount of the time. So, once again, here is the Crimson Dragon. Going to Primera to add Wake Up here, and then we get to use Crimson Dragon on Auxilia for Blazar. Now, if my opponent would try to battle with Imseti, I could also use Blazar there. They're going to normal Vision Resonator and go for Baron. I kind of figured this was going to happen. Unfortunately, I don't really have too much of a choice other than to use Blazar here, which kind of just lets my opponent go for the King Sark here. Also, I do want to note that I did misplay by not activating Maxi earlier. Does Vision Resonator activate? No, it does not start a chain link. That's why my brain was kind of on autopilot and I didn't even really think to do it. But I really should have activated Maxi after they resolved adding Vision Resonator off of Crimson Gaia. I missed out on 2 draws here, which could potentially matter, because my opponent's about to summon a bunch of Horus monsters, and one of those draws could have been the Nibiru. So that is definitely something that I wanted to point out here. Also, I thought I was at 8k life points, because I just wasn't paying attention there either. Only at 5,000, meaning that the Phalanx isn't going to save me like I kind of initially assumed that it would. Yeah, my opponent still has the ability to attack with Imseti and Kebesnif, which means, of course, they can just swing in for lethal here. Really a bit of a shame. This is like one of the very few times where I do kind of wish I could see the top couple of cards in my deck before I lose, just to see if Nib was in them and just how much my misplay mattered. But honestly, even if Nib wasn't among those cards, my misplay would still matter, because you should still strive to play optimally every time, ideally. It's not always possible, but ideally that is what we're doing. So a misplay is a misplay, but you know what a misplay also is? Not the end of the world. We definitely just move on to the game, the next game, and take it from there. So why don't we do that? Let's go ahead and take a look at our next replay, our last one for this video. And our final game here is going to be up against a fairly standard Tenpai deck. Naturally, that means we are going to go first, but I did win the coin flip here. So that means I don't necessarily know that I'm playing against Tenpai. Got a pretty good hand. Get to start by normal summoning Trudea, because I also have LZ in hand. And if I really, really had to, I could LZ pitch Called By. Now here I am going to end up using the Call By on Maxi, which sort of locks me into doing more Centurion stuff, but I could also LZ send Trudea in certain situations as an additional sort of backup plan. Going to Primera for the stand-up here, activating stand-up's effect. Stand-up, I'm going to pitch Maxi, because I just Called By to Maxi, meaning I can't use mine during my opponent's next turn. LZ, I still have theoretical use for, and a Stellar I could use for plays on the follow-up turn. Going to Auxilia for the Phalanx, and then of course the Gargoyle activates here. They're going to Magnum Hut Gargoyle, which I'm not really that concerned about. And then, of course, activate the effect. Now, here I'm going to go for some additional plays, right? I want to activate the LZ pitching Phalanx. Now, you might be saying, Lex, what are you doing? You just pitched Phalanx. You don't get to use it as disruption. That's true, but Phalanx has a phenomenal graveyard effect that is arguably better than its main effect. It is actually better in certain situations. So what I'm going to try to do here is make use of that potentially. But of course, like I said, I also get to special summon LZ and then attempt to go for some plays. Now, I did sort of not factor in the fact that I already used my normal summon, so I can special summon Ruki here And I could go for the Rakila, but I'd have to give up my Centurion combo line, either Trudea or stand-up. I could probably give up Trudea here and not worry too much about it. I speak in the hypothetical because we get nibbed here. Yeah, because the Centurion line is 4 summons, and we definitely did more. However, remember that Phalanx effect, and the only drawback is that Phalanx, or that Auxilia, loses 1500 attack. It still keeps its effect, meaning we can just do a regular Centurion set of plays now. And we have a giant nib token, too. Specifically, we have a nib token that has over 6,000 attack and defense points, meaning that even if our opponent were to pop the field spell to double the Trident Dragon's attack points, it still wouldn't be enough to battle over the nib. That is a great spot for us to be in against Tenpai. On top of course, like I said, as we're doing here, being able to just do Centurion plays anyway. I am so glad I pitched that Phalanx for LZ. Granted, that play into LZ is what triggered the nib in the first place, but I think we debatably end up in a better spot for having been Nibiru'd. Which, that's always a very wild sentiment to be able to make, that my opponent Nibiru'd me and my board improved as a result. Excuse me. Okay, here they're going for the SP. I know exactly what they're thinking. They're going to try to SP my Blazar. And you know what I say to that? I say, you can go right ahead. I don't negate the summon. I don't negate the effect. Because when SP Little Knight's effect resolves, your opponent cannot attack directly this turn. Now, even though they can't battle over the Primal Being token, they could still hypothetically destroy it with the level 10 Tenpai Dragon's effect. So, by allowing the SP Little Knight to banish my Blazar, I have secured the fact that I will take another turn. My opponent cannot defeat me on this turn. They just cannot do it. Excuse me, sorry about that. Yeah, they can go for the Trident here, that's fine. Like I said, they can't get over, 1, my monsters, and again, 2, even if they could, they can't battle directly. So, the fact that I'm going to get a follow-up turn here, especially when I have both stand-up and a Stellar and LZ, like, I can full combo. Like, I can make whatever board I want when it comes around to my turn. Yeah, so here they can switch the Auxilia to attack mode and deal a little bit of damage to me, but that's about it. They don't even really have the ability to pop the Primal Being token here. They're going to special Ashundra and then use that to go into the Hieratic Seal. Of course, the Transcendent Dragon does get to come back, and here is where it does get to pop, actually the stand-up, which I think is the better pop here, to be fair. Alright. Going into my turn, we actually just peeled literally the best possible card we could have, which was Emblema Oath to just put another stand-up on the field right away. Actually just the best possible top deck. Now here, my opponent's going to activate the Hieratic Seal, and this was a massive misplay. And what's funny is that during the actual game itself, when my opponent did this, they kind of sat here for, like, honestly about a minute. And I think they were trying to figure out why they could only bounce one of their 2 Synchro Monsters. They have to bounce their own Synchro Monster here, which is where they end up conceding as a result. The reason that our opponent was forced to bounce their own Synchro Monster here is because the Hieratic Seal can only bounce a face-up card. On my field, I have a face-down field spell, which wouldn't have mattered if they bounced it face-up anyway. Could just activate it again. Unless they chained it to the effect. Then that would have stopped it from resolving. But I think they're trying to bounce my nib token, and you can't do that. You can't do that because tokens can't go to the hand. So that's why I believe they were forced to pick one of their own 2 Synchro Monsters there, which is why they surrendered when they did. Now, again, we also had stand-up and multiple White Forest cards. So we just had infinite, relatively to our deck, lines there. But It's still a very funny way to close out the game. So that's going to do it for this game. Thanks, as always, for watching. I know a lot of you were looking forward to this list, this deck, this video, so I hope you enjoyed them. I do, like I said before, want to continue to make improvements and maybe even work in that toy engine. So that might be the next update for this video, or for this deck in particular. But I do still also want to cover other Runic variants, especially Sprite, Runic, White Forest variants, especially Sprite, including Runic, is what I meant to say. Anyway, why don't we just go ahead now and move to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Just want to give you a huge thanks for watching all the way to the very end of the video. Believe it or not, that is actually one of the best ways that you can support the channel, is by watching the videos in their entirety. But there are many ways in which you can support the channel if you are so interested. The names that you're seeing on screen here, I gotta give an extra special thanks to, because these are people who have chosen to either become a member on YouTube, which if you're interested you can do as well via the join button next to the subscribe button down there, or have signed up over on Patreon and become members there. Link to that is going to be in the description below. Without the support that is being offered by, again, all the people that you're seeing on screen right here, I would not be able to take the time to dedicate to uploading daily YouTube videos. So thank you so very much. But there are also other ways you can support as well. Again, link to the description below. If you like my deck tracker that you'll see in a lot of my videos, the Untapped Companion, you can download that for free, and if you use my affiliate link down there, then that also goes a long way towards supporting the channel. That's, again, free. So is subscribing here on YouTube. That's also free and a huge way to support. You can also check out Twitch, once again linked in the description below. Following and subscribing over there will not only support as well, but also give you notifications of when I go live if you want to catch some of the live streams. But really, no matter how you choose to support, it all adds up, and it all definitely means the world. So thank you, each and every one of you. For now, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out. But more than that, I'm hoping that you have a fantastic day.